Okay, so let's jump right in. Today, we're taking a look at a concept for social media that's trying to do something, well, pretty different. It's called Treechat.ai, and it's built around a vision of fixing some of the biggest headaches we all have with the web today.
Yeah, I'm guessing this quote probably sounds familiar to a lot of you. It pretty much nails the feeling, right? This is really the jumping off point for this whole idea that social media right now just feels built for conflict. So the folks behind TreeChat.ai looked at this and basically asked, what if we could build something from the ground up to do the exact opposite? So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll get into the core premise. Then, we'll look at the permanent foundation it's all built on. After that, we'll explore the engine that drives it for creators. And finally, we'll step back and ask what this all could mean for our digital future.
All right, let's start with the premise. This is all about making a shift, moving away from the problems we all know so well and toward a new vision of how we can connect with each other.
You can really see the core idea when you put them side by side. On one hand, you have today's platforms. They're mostly driven by ads, which means they're often designed to be divisive to keep you clicking, and your data is locked away in their private vaults. The vision for Treechat AI is a total 180. It's a system driven by the actual value people create, where your data is permanent and belongs to you, and the connections are supposed to be more organic. So, how is any of this actually possible? Well, that brings us to part two, the permanent foundation. The entire system is built on some very specific blockchain tech. At the very heart of this is something called Bitcoin SV, or BSV. Now, don't get too hung up on the name. Here's the key takeaway. It's a blockchain that's specifically designed to handle huge amounts of data. And that's the secret sauce. It lets content, and we're not just talking about text here, be stored directly on the blockchain permanently. So in the real world, it basically acts like a digital preservation engine. Let's say you share a link to an article, a picture, a song, whatever. Instead of just saving the link, which we all know can break or disappear, the platform actually follows it, grabs the content itself, and writes it onto the blockchain forever. That means even if the original website goes down, the thing you saved is still there, safe and sound. This idea of building something that lasts even extends to the conversations. They're structured to grow like a tree. You have the main topic, that's the trunk, and then related discussions can just branch off from there. It keeps everything organized without losing that original connection. It's a pretty neat way to think about it. Now, this permanent foundation we talked about, it also supports a really unique creators engine. So this next part is all about the money and the integrated AI that work together to shape the whole experience. This is a really fundamental shift in the economics. Instead of annoying ads, the whole thing is funded by tiny little user micropayments. And that simple change completely flips the incentives. The goal isn't to stir up controversy to get more clicks. The goal is to reward quality content and genuine connection. So, the value flows direct to the people who create it, not just to the platform itself. And this is where it starts to get really creative. You can actually have a workflow where a simple chat can turn into a piece of digital art. You could be talking about ideas with your friends or even with an AI assistant right there in the thread. Then use AI to generate images, refine them with other people, and if you end up with something awesome, you can mint it as an NFT, proving it's yours and making it something you can actually sell. So how can you actually store a whole piece of art on a blockchain? It comes down to this number, 5 megabytes. Now, that might not sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but for a single blockchain transaction, it's actually massive. It's more than enough to store rich content like high-quality images, songs, or documents, making them a permanent part of the public record. So in short, the platform is trying to turn social interaction into a creative and even an economic act. Just like the quote says, that line between just chatting and actually creating valuable art starts to get really blurry. Creativity can just bubble up right out of a conversation. All right, let's zoom out now and look at the bigger picture. What does this long-term vision of permanent data really mean for the internet as a whole? The best way to understand the power of this is through the story of another platform called Twetch. It was a social app running on the same blockchain. Well, its main website, the interface, eventually shut down. Now, normally that would mean everything's gone forever, right? But because all the conversations were stored on the blockchain, Treechat.ai could come along and basically resurrect them. It's a wild example of how your data can outlive any single app because it truly belongs to the users.
And this leads to a philosophy that the source material calls co-opetition, a mix of cooperation and competition. The idea is that since every app is building on the same permanent ledger, one person's success actually creates prosperity for the whole group. Using any app on the system makes the whole ecosystem stronger, turning individual wins into community victories.
The goal is ambitious. It's to create a whole new kind of digital economy. And this quote from the source really captures that vision perfectly. Capitalism with a conscience, individual achievement that serves the collective good. It's all about lining up what's good for you with what's good for everyone.
And so that leaves us with this final question to chew on. By changing the very bones of a social network, the tech, the economics, the structure, could its design actually truly change the nature of how we talk to each other online for the better? Treechat.ai is basically one big experiment trying to prove that the answer is yes.